Hi students, welcome to World Geography. I'm your instructor Anne Saxe, and I'd like to take a few minutes to go over what you're going to be learning about this week in our class. First, just to give you a little bit of background on what geography is, it's concerned with spatial distributions, the way any kind of pattern is spread out over a given space. And geographers want to answer three questions when they try to study a place. What is where? In other words, what will we find in a particular location? Why is it there? So to answer that question, we'll look at the physical factors and the cultural and human factors that influence why things are in particular places, why they are the way they are in that place. So for example, to understand why the tropical rainforest is located where it is, mostly along the equator, I'm going to look at precipitation patterns. Perhaps I'll find that the vegetation in tropical rainforests needs abundant precipitation. Then sunlight. How much sunlight do the plants in the tropical rainforest need? And I will likely find that the approximately 12 hours of daylight and the solar radiation that helps those plants thrive in that environment influence why I find the tropical rainforest where I find it. I might also look at the tectonic processes in a particular place, the things that shape the landscape, mountain building, island building, those kinds of things. That will help me understand why I find islands in a particular place or why I find mountains in a particular place. And the cultural and human factors that will help me understand why something is where it is would be things like history. What groups of people have traveled through these places? What are the migration patterns, both historically and in the present day? What groups of people have conquered those areas? What wars have taken place in those areas that have resulted in lingering tensions between groups of people? Did a specific religion originate in that area? Was a religion brought to that area? And are there sacred sites in those areas? Like in the case of Israel and Palestine, where we see that there's controversy over different religious sites. So looking at those factors, those are just a few examples, will help me understand why something is where it is, why it is the way it is in that particular location. And probably the most important question for you is, why should I care? Well, in today's world, things that happen in one place will inevitably trickle down, and in our globalized world will be affected by things that happen in other places. So if the economy in one country fails, perhaps the stock market is affected, or perhaps we have to pay higher prices for gasoline. So there are consequences to things that happen in other places, and there are consequences for people in other places that happen here in the United States. And we also care because we want to be able to make future predictions. Let's say we want to look at population patterns. People who are leaving certain parts of the world. So if you have migration out of the Middle East, for example, we want to make predictions for where those people are going to go. We want to make predictions for how their needs are going to be met, and so forth. So those three questions keep in mind as we go through the study of geography. If you looked in your Module 1 folder already, you've been introduced to the 5 themes of geography. And these are very important themes that will be interwoven throughout the rest of our class. So it's important that you understand, as they are the foundation upon which the study of geography can be conducted. And we have themes such as location, place, human-environment interactions, movement, and finally regions. Let's take a brief look at each one of these themes. First, location. I said I wanted to know, if I'm a geographer, where something can be found. And to get that information, I might use absolute location, which could be latitude and longitude coordinates. With that, I can be very specific. Or you can give me a specific address, and I can look that up in my GPS and find that precise location. But sometimes we want to describe locations in terms of where we are relative to other places. So a relative location, for our discussion this week, I chose New Zealand as the place I wanted to live. And though it's in a region here in the Austral realm, and though it is an island unto itself, it's very closely connected with Australia. And its relative location here in the Pacific makes it an attractive place for immigrants from East Asia and Southeast Asia to relocate and to come for work opportunities. My next theme is place. So what is it like in this particular place? Again, what are the physical characteristics and the human or cultural characteristics that make this place the way it is? In New Zealand, I might describe the physical characteristics as being comprised of two islands, the North Island and the South Island. It has a mountain range here in the west, and that might help me understand something about the human characteristics, why I won't find population in the western part of the southern island, because it is mountainous. And I'll also understand something about the economy, because in the flatter areas, I'm going to find more activities like sheep raising, dairy farming, and mixed crop and livestock. My third theme, human-environment interaction. How do I see humans and the environment interrelating? To understand this, I need to be aware that humans depend on the natural environment, they modify the natural environment to meet their needs, and they also adapt to the environment when there are changes, or when they have to migrate to a place that they're not used to. So here for New Zealand, one way humans are interacting with their environment is that they take advantage of the geothermal energy that's available. So this here is a geothermal plant. Again, with the livestock grazing, very important because the environment is conducive to that, and it is one of their largest exports. Logging, and then we also have spectacular fjords, mountains, and so we have Fiordland National Park here that perhaps there's preservation, and that's one way humans have decided to protect their environment rather than where they're using the environment to meet their needs. My next theme is movement. How and why are places connected with one another? I already said that in our globalized world, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to find an incident that won't connect with another part of the world or influence them. And this could be not just things that happen in the physical environment, but it could be ideas, it can be the movement of people via transportation or immigration, it can be importing and exporting of materials, legally or illegally. And so here I'm showing a diagram of Maori, who are the indigenous people in New Zealand, but they have traveled there from the area of Polynesia and settled there long before before Europeans came there. Then the relative location, again, influencing the movement of people. Here we have the persons approved for New Zealand residency, and that's largely from China and the United Kingdom. And this map here shows a cable line, a submarine cable line, connecting these different places, but also facilitating the movement of ideas, information, etc. We have a lot of that now with the internet. Oh, diseases, that's another thing I should say, or something that we'll study with movement. The last theme that we have is regions. We look at how regions form and change. How are regions different from each other, and do they also have similarities? For this, to identify any differences and similarities, again, we'll look at the physical or human characteristics. And for my example of New Zealand, again, the Maori, New Zealand has an indigenous population. Australia also has an indigenous population of Aborigines. So they're different groups of people, but they both have indigenous populations. And then the landscape here, quite different in New Zealand with the mountains, with fjords, with glaciated areas, versus New Zealand, which compared to Australia, which will be largely flat. And here you have the outback and the famous Ayers Rock. Now you're going to be looking at most likely a region of North America in your discussion. So you're going to be talking about these regions here that you'll find in your textbook. Be sure to apply the first two themes, location and place, but you're always welcome to expand more on the other themes as well. If you have any questions throughout the course, please feel free to send me an email, and I look forward to learning more about the world with you. Have a great course.